Look, the stage is yours. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon, Jan, and welcome to everyone as well. I'm actually in Toronto at the moment, so even though this picture in the background is the Ashburton Gold Project, I'm in Toronto in Canada, and then in New York, seeing brokers and shareholders as well. So it's a good time to have a chat, I think, because there's a fair bit happening with Kalamazoo, not just on the gold front, but also in regard to the lithium. But perhaps I'll just start off, if I can, Jan, just talking a little bit about where we are with the gold price and lithium price, if I can. Gold price, around about 1950 at the moment US, but in Aussie dollar terms, it's still close to $3,000. So it's still, a very good price. But like all gold stocks around the world, share price is down, and so it's a little bit confusing at the moment. And I think the world's in a little bit of a state where people are trying to determine, where to invest. But we're still very bullish on gold. We think it's the right place to be. Even though the price, we're not seeing the share prices increase, what is occurring is that costs are going up across the board. And we're seeing that in regard to projects and mines, labor and production costs. But what that means is that it's harder to get gold projects up, which means gold prices are going to stay elevated for a long period of time, in our view. Similarly for lithium, you're probably not seeing it as much in Europe or in North America, but there is a massive lithium boom occurring in Australia. And Australia has gone from having almost no lithium production 3 or 4 years ago to now the world's largest lithium producer. And it's now becoming one of our major exports. So there's a big rush for lithium, and all the big major companies are actually now looking for major projects in Australia. And that's where I think Kalamazoo is well presented, is that we've got both gold and lithium. I will talk a little bit later about what we're doing, and that is we're spinning out our lithium assets into a new company called Kali Metals. We're doing that in conjunction with a Canadian company called Goldie Resources. That's very interesting for us, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. What I'll do now, Jan, I'll just go through a quick presentation. People may have seen a lot of this information, but for those who haven't, it gives a bit of an update as to where we are at the moment. So I'll just share my screen if I can. Usual forward-looking statements. Look, any public company needs to actually give a bit of a disclaimer about anything we're discussing here. Of course, I'm not giving advice in regard to buying shares. All I'm trying to do is provide information as to what Kalamazoo and Kali Metals is all about. Everything we're discussing here as well is actually on our website. So, and that's through various ASX announcements, and you can see them all listed here. So if anyone wants to have a look, go into greater detail, please go to our website, which is kzr.com.au. So, Jan, just to give an overview as to where we are at the moment. Kalamazoo, we have major gold projects in the Pilbara, which is up in the northwest of Australia, and we can see here on the top left of that map, and also in Victoria. Up in the Pilbara, look, our flagship company or flagship project is the Ashburton Gold Project. Major project, and that's the picture you can see behind me. Previously, it had been mined 20 years ago, and more than 300,000 ounces of gold came from this project. We did a new resource estimate, and what that does is it advises exactly how much gold is in the ground, and we released that just early this year. And so it's 1.44 million ounces at 2.8 grams a tonne. The grade has gone up by about 10%, which is very good for us. And now we have the confidence that 75% of all the gold in this project is in one defined open pit. And so therefore, once this project's developed, it'll be in one pit only. Then also in the Pilbara, we've got the Melina West Gold Project, and it's a long strike from De Grey's major Hemi discovery, which is around about 9 or 10 million ounces. And De Grey's about to put out a pre-feasibility study in, I think, this quarter, describing how it's going to get into production. So we're a long strike, which means we're on the same structural corridor, and we think that's very prospective. And then in Victoria, we've got got a number of gold projects there. We've got Castlemaine, which is a very high-grade historical gold field from which more than 6 million ounces of gold was produced, mainly in the 1850s to 1870s. It was considered to be the world's richest alluvial or at-surface gold project. In South Muckleford, around about 2 million ounces came from that. And we also recently acquired the Mount Piper Gold Project. And that's a very large project just to the south of Fosterville, which I think people will be aware is the world's richest gold mine. So our strategy is that we're looking to either acquire, discover, or progress projects that really create value for our shareholders. And there's a number of steps that we're doing that, which I'll give a bit more detail as we go on. As part of our strategy, providing value to our shareholders is to look at the value of assets. And when I mean the assets, I mean mining projects, to see how can we create value for our shareholders. And we believe we're doing this now with the Kelly Metals spin-out. And what that is that we have a number of lithium projects up at, in the Pilbara, known as Doms Hill and Marble Bar, and also on the east coast of Australia, in what they call the Lachlan Fold Belt. And that's 2 projects, funny names, but typical Australian names of Jinjallik and Tallangatta. That's a new area, but it's got a lot of the pathfinders for lithium, which is basically tin or tantalum or tungsten. And it's a lot of historical working. So we've gone in there and acquired a couple of thousand square kilometres of ground. So what we decided to do for the value of our shareholders was to actually combine our lithium assets with those of a major gold producer in Canada called Karora Resources. And that's one of the reasons I'm here in Toronto for the next couple of days, is seeing the management of Karora. Karora produce about 170,000 ounces of gold a year, just south of Kalgoorlie at what they call their Higginsville gold project. But it hasn't been involved in any lithium exploration, and its focus is purely on gold. So it made a lot of sense for Karora and Kalamazoo to actually combine these assets into a new ASX-listed company. And so we've now started that process, which we announced just a couple of weeks ago. And we intend to spin this out into a new ASX-listed company called Kelly Metals and raise probably $10 or $12 million in that spin out. Some of this ground, and I'll go into a little bit more detail later, is the hottest lithium ground in Australia. It's surrounded by a number of major lithium mines and deposits and is very highly sought after. So it's been a terrific opportunity for us with Karora. We're putting together a very proven and technical management team, which includes, as our new managing director, Graham Sloan, who was previously the managing director also of Karora. So he knows this area really well. And I'm staying on as chairman of Kelly Metals as well, to look after the interests of Kalamazoo shareholders. But as I mentioned before, our strategy really is to try and create value for our shareholders, because that's what it's all about. So what we decided to do was that when we list Kelly Metals on the stock exchange in about September, we're going to provide to all our shareholders 25% of the shares of Kalamazoo is granted in Kelly Metals, and we're going to give them directly to our shareholders. So therefore, our shareholders will have a direct interest in Kelly Metals as well. So in effect, it's like a dividend. They're getting shares for nothing. They don't have to pay for these. They get them for nothing. As well, we're providing a priority entitlement to our shareholders, all Kalamazoo shareholders who wish to purchase shares at the IPO in Kelly Metals. They'll have a priority entitlement. And so that'll get them to the front of the queue. And so we think this creates great value for our shareholders going forward.
Luke, just allow me to add something. I think in your press release, it said that you are going to focus on Australian shareholders due to legal reasons. And I think for everybody, it's good to know that in the Kalamazoo share register, you are filed as an Australia shareholder because your shares are with a Clearstream Bank and BNP Paribas. And yes. BNP Paribas nominee is holding all your shares in Australia. So you are listed as an Australian shareholder. So if it says it's only for Australian guys, that includes you as well, just as an explanation to add.
Oh, that's very important. Yeah, thanks for that, Jan. So if I just talk a little bit about what we call our license to operate. And I think everyone's becoming aware that ESG, or environmental, social and governance, is just becoming more and more important in this country. Actually, what I might do, if just give me one stop, there's a bit of sun coming through this window here. I'll just pull the blind, if you don't mind. Just excuse me for a sec.
That's all right. Okay, ich sehe schon, die ersten Fragen kamen rein. Die werden wir dann ans Ende schieben. Also kurz noch abwarten. All right.
I think that's better. ESG is so very important today, and that is it sets the ability for a lot of people to invest, and a lot of institutions and funds is you must have very strong ESG credentials. We're very proud that Kalamazoo became the first gold and lithium explorer in Australia to be certified as carbon neutral for its operations under the federal government or the Australian government's Climate Active program. So we did that about 18 months, 2 years ago. Interestingly, Karora has also now become, under the Climate Active program, carbon neutral. So here are two companies that believe that's very important for our activities. And what that means is we're offsetting our emissions as well. As we reduce our carbon emissions, we're offsetting them by buying offsets, forestry offsets, etc. And we intend to do exactly the same for Kali Metals going forward. Other aspects in regard to our ESG and our license to operate, our relationships with traditional owners or Indigenous owners in our country. Health and safety, very important for us, as well as corporate governance. And I think, as our shareholders would know, Jan, is that not only are we listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, but we're also listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange as well. And board level commitment to transparency, accountability, etc., is very, very important for us. Bit of the corporate overview. I think most of our shareholders would realise that the top 5% own about 50%, including the Reinehr family and management, which is around about 35%. So our interests are directly aligned with shareholders. We're trying to increase the value and provide strategic value for all our shareholders going forward. Interestingly, we also have Eric Sprott as a major shareholder. Eric Sprott got involved 2 or 3 years ago at 40 cents, mind you. So anyone who buys today is actually buying, very well compared to Eric Sprott. And let me say, he has never sold a share. He's been a good supporter. Got a good board who are very stable, have been there with us for a long time. Current market cap of around about $20 million. And a number of options. And you can see here our share price. Look, the share price has been down, but look, it's been pretty consistent in that trading band at the moment. We're working very hard to improve the share price, but a lot of it is market focused. But I guess one of the benefits is that, as I mentioned before, shareholders are now going to have shares in 2 companies going forward, being both Kalamazoo and Kali Metals. Just talk a little bit about the Pilbara. We did put out a new resource statement the start of this year for 1.44 million ounces. As I mentioned, the grade has gone up to now 2.8 grams a tonne. And that's a very good grade, or a high, medium to higher grade compared to our peers in the area. There are a number of projects that are being defined at the moment and come into operation. Most important one, as I mentioned before, was De Grey's Melina project. It's more than 9 million ounces, but it's only at 1.2 grams a tonne. Calidus's Warrawoona project is 1.2. Capricorn's Karlawinda project, which is a very good project, it's 0.8 grams. So if you compare that with Kalamazoo's 2.8 grams, we think that is what creates true value for this project. Most of the gold now is in the Mount Olympus deposit, as I mentioned. Plus, we've got an exploration target that came out of this resource statement of about another 170,000 ounces that we believe we can bring into our resource estimate, which will take it up to about 1.6 million. That exploration target has identified where we need to do some more drilling to give us confidence to get that back into the resource estimate. So that's a great opportunity for us. We continue at the moment to do economic studies and scoping studies on developing this project. And we are talking to a number of parties in regard to who may wish to work with us and help us develop this project for its next stage. And we're still very confident this is going to be the next gold development in the Pilbara. Staying in that area, this is our Melina West gold project. As I said previously, it's a long strike from De Grey's Hemi discovery. We've got numerous targets there. Look, we did have one hole, it was actually the last of our program late last year, where the last meter was at 10 grams, which was, gave us a lot of confidence. We had to shorten that drill program because of weather, some very significant rain coming, but we're very keen to get back in there, and a number of key targets that we'd like to drill there this coming season. Just trying to allocate resources at the moment and get drillers and people there. Then coming across to Victoria, we've built up a pretty significant portfolio here. You can see on this map below, we've got the Castlemaine Gold Project in the middle, South Muckleford to one side, Tarnagulla then further to the west, and then of course the Mount Piper project just on the right-hand side of this map. Mount Piper is quite a significant project, 1,500 square kilometres, but it's in a different type of geological setting to what we're seeing at Castlemaine and South Muckleford. It's what they call the Melbourne zone, which is more an epizonal, high-grade gold antimony focus. And we're seeing that at the moment because we've got Costerfield, which is immediately on our border to the north. It's one of the world's richest gold antimony mines. As I mentioned, you've got Fosterville again, just further to the northwest. But you've also got this new project called Sunday Creek, which is owned by a company called Southern Cross Gold. And it's had some very significant discoveries just to the south of us, and announced some other very good drill results I think it was on Thursday or Friday last week. So we've had people on the ground now. We're working through land access. It's mainly large farms and a bit of pine plantation. Identified a project called the Goldie project, which we want to get in and start drilling this season. So that's a terrific project. We've just got to keep working at it and to get on the ground and start drilling. So our focus in this area is really trying to consolidate these major gold fields. Victoria historically has been known as one of the richest gold regions in the world. Obviously in the 1850s to 1890s, significant amount of gold came out of there, about 60 million ounces at a very high grade of about 15 grams a tonne. And then, of course, Fosterville, over the last probably 5 years, considered the world's richest and highest grade gold mine. So that's why a lot of people now are focusing on Victoria. And we believe we've done a very good job over the last couple of years consolidating these major gold fields going forward. So we think they're great assets, and we're looking to do more work there over the next couple of, not just this year, but over the next couple of years. This just goes in a little bit more detail about that Mount Piper Gold project, which we acquired. We acquired it very well. The terms were very good for that. It's very similar, as I mentioned, to that Fosterville, Costerfield, Sunday Creek type project, which is that epizonal high-grade gold. Location is absolutely fantastic, but interestingly, there's been very little exploration done here. And it's just one of those historical aspects. From about 1890 to really only the last few years, there'd basically been no gold exploration in Australia at all. And it's only really because of Fosterville that people are now focusing on it. And I think that's where we were, I guess, lucky in that we managed to acquire these projects just before a lot of the companies started focusing on it. So that's enabled us to actually acquire these projects, which we believe have got true value. As I mentioned, that the project that we're looking at is the Goldie project. The previous owners had done some work there, basically on rock chip sampling, but they were seeing 30 grams, 31 grams a tonne, which is about an ounce a tonne. So that's on this map. You can see it's in the bottom left-hand corner, called Goldie North or Goldie Prospect, and that's where we've had people field checking over the last couple of months. A bit more detail about Goldie, as you can see, the trend line. Fortunately for us, a lot of it is in this state forest. And even though it takes a little bit longer in state forest or Crown land to actually get approvals, once you do, it's a lot easier probably to work there than in farmland because you're not having to deal with owners. So we're very keen to actually get in there and start doing some work. And you can see here some of the rock chip sampling that the previous owners had done. So gives us a lot of confidence. The strike length of this rock chip sampling is more than 1 kilometre, and that's where we've been focusing on. And then Tarnagulla, which is a small project for us in size area, but it's certainly in the right area. Tarnagalla, historically, this is where the world's richest gold nugget was found, which was called the Welcome Stranger. This is about 1860, I think it was. More than 3,000 ounces. So size-wise, it was like about a meter long and half a meter wide. That was found just to the west of Tarnagalla project. And Tarnagalla itself, historically, has produced some very high grade, including the Poverty Reef, which is just to the south of us. And that was 360,000 ounces at 92 grams a tonne, or 3 ounces a tonne. And just to put that in perspective, Jan, we were referring to the Ashburton, where De Grey's Hemi discovery is at 1 gram a tonne, or 1.1, and here's 92 grams. So you don't need a very large deposit to actually make some significant money. So we've done soil sampling over this project, and we want to get in there and drill, hopefully this year. It's fully permitted now, and we've got all our native title approval, so it's just ready for us to start. And then we'll just jump in a little bit into the lithium, if I can. This is what we call the Higginsville project, and this is what Karora have been mining their Higginsville project, just south of Kalgoorlie. And you can see on this map, all that area in the dark blue, in the boxes there, that's Higginsville's ground, which is about 1,600 square kilometres. And to have that larger land holding just south of Kalgoorlie, which is one of the world's richest gold fields in WA, is very significant. But the important thing, and this is what I mentioned at the start, is that Australia has gone from producing no lithium to now, the world's largest lithium producer. And you can see some of these mines now, just in this immediate area. You've got Mount Marion to the north, which is owned by Mineral Resources, very large Australian mining company. You've got Bald Hill, just on the right-hand side of this map. It's currently being mined. And then you've got a number of other deposits, Pioneer Dome, Mount Dean, Boldinia, which is owned by Liontown, which is subject to a takeover at the moment. I think a $5 billion takeover. So this is the right area to be. And then you've got Manna, which is another lithium mine just to the north. As you can imagine, the owners of these projects have been very keen to talk to Karora and others to see if they can increase their land holding, because geologically it's in the right spot. But we're very fortunate to have created an arrangement with Karora whereby we're consolidating all this ground, as I mentioned, into Kali Metals. We have already identified numerous targets and pegmatites throughout this area. And a lot of that has been because of the historical drilling that Karora has done, and others before it, over the last 20 or 30 years. And so, as you can imagine, there are tens of thousands of drill holes through here for gold. But invariably what would happen is that when they would assay it, these drill holes, these intersections, they would ignore what they call the pegmatites, which is where the lithium is found. They're only looking for gold. So we have significant number of pegmatites that have been identified in this area that have never been assayed for lithium. So we're now going back to look at all that data, identifying all our drill targets, and we are planning to be drilling in this area at or just before or just at the time of listing of Kali Metals. And the thing that actually stands out to me more than anything is that there are more than 600 drill intersections into pegmatites of more than 10 meters in length down hole that have yet to be analysed for any lithium or associated data. So as you can imagine, the target opportunity that provides for us is very significant. And this has enabled us, as I mentioned, to start developing drill intersections and targets for the IPO, or just about at the time of IPO. We have already completed our independent technical assessment for the prospectus, and it looks very prospective. So that's what Karora is vending into the Kali Metals. And then what Kalamazoo is including into Kali Metals is our Pilbara lithium projects and our East Coast or Lachlan Fold lithium projects. I think our shareholders would have seen this map before. This is where our Pilbara lithium projects are. And you can see that just nearby is two of Australia's largest lithium projects, being Pilgangoora, which is owned by Pilbara Minerals, and Wodgina, which is owned by Albemarle and Mineral Resources. And these are two operating lithium mines. And they're about 40 kilometres away. In the case of Pilgangoora, maybe 45. Same geological setting. And what they mean by that is that lithium, and we're talking hard rock spodumene lithium, is invariably founded on the contact between the greenstones and the granite. So it's like a 5 or 10K zone. And you can see the zone identified here. And that's where you want to be in regard to exploring it. And it was for that reason that when we started announcing some initial portable XRF soil results, or lithium index for both Doms Hill and Marble Bar, that we were approached by the Chilean lithium company SQM. And SQM, second largest lithium producer in the world, produce about 20% of the world's lithium. They approached us, and as we've discussed previously, we agreed then for them to farm into this ground. And what we mean by that is that they can earn up to 70% on both Doms Hill and Marble Bar by spending a minimum of $12 million on direct exploration in the ground, which they've been sold funding over the last 18 months. But importantly, Kalamazoo has actually been managing and operating all of the exploration activities on behalf of SQM, or for the SQM Kalamazoo JV. And that has been going extremely well. So, we were the first of the exploration JVs that SQM has entered into Australia. This ground, including the JV with SQM, is being vended into Kali Metals. So it's maintaining our relationship with SQM, and they have actually agreed and are very pleased to be a part of it going forward. And why that's important is that, if we were to find a major discovery here, or maybe even at Higginsville or on the Lachlan Fold Belt, we have an initial relationship with the second largest lithium producer in the world, who've got an incredible balance sheet, as you can imagine. But more importantly, they're very experienced in developing projects, funding them, building them. And importantly, in regard to the JV, is that SQM is only looking for what they call a tier 1 lithium project, something of major scale, such as a Pilgangoora or Wodgina. But the deal we did with SQM and the JV was that if there's a smaller project, and maybe not of that scale, we have first rights to buy it back. And so that creates real value. So one of two things could happen if we're successful in finding a project. Either we have 30% free carried of a major tier 1 project, or we have the opportunity to have 100% of a smaller project going forward. Then this is what they call the Lachlan Fold Belt in Victoria and New South Wales. And this is a couple of 100 kilometres to the, probably 300 kilometres to the northeast of Melbourne, where I live in Victoria. This is historically a gold and copper region, being the Lachlan Fold Belt. And not many people, or actually very few people, have been looking for lithium. But the geology actually looks very prospective. It's got that same granite greenstone contact. And just to the south of our project, you can see in the light blue is a project called the Dorchap Lithium Project. And they've actually had some success in identifying lithium with some drilling. But a lot of that ground's up in the high grounds, in ski fields. So that might be a little bit more difficult to develop. But having said that, SQM has now completed a JV with this company on that project. So it's very keen on this area as well. But what we've done is we've actually followed the geological setting further to the north and have been granted the Tallangatta Lithium Project, which is basically in Victoria, and then the Jingellic further to the north. And as I mentioned previously, there's a lot of historical tin tungsten mines in this area, and that's a great pathfinder for finding lithium. So we're very bullish on this area, very much a first mover or greenfields. But the interesting thing, certainly looking for lithium in Australia, is that if you look over in the west in WA, there's very little ground left. Everything has been taken. It's been a big, literally, I would have said a gold rush, but it's a lithium rush for that ground. So that's why we're looking also on the east coast. So then perhaps just as a summary, Jan, we have major assets, gold assets in Australia. Obviously, the Ashburton, that's a far more developed project. We're now looking to see, how do we get that into development, or how do we extract maximum value for that asset going forward? and Victorian gold. We've got some great gold fields there. We know that it's world-class area. Needs a lot more work, a lot more drilling, but we're looking for a major discovery there as well. Then, for the benefit of our shareholders, we're listing or IPOing Kelly Metals, Lithium Explorer, and we're providing an interspecies distribution to our shareholders and a priority entitlement if they wish to further invest. So based on that, we've been doing a lot of work over the last 12 or 18 months on a number of fronts. The lithium spin out has been taking a lot of effort, but we think it's the right thing for our shareholders. And we continue to plan and undertake drill programs right across our portfolio. That's a bit of a summary, Jan. Happy to take questions or delve into some greater detail as we go forward, if you like.